Manila, thank you so much for joining us on the Claima Stories podcast.
Thank you for having me, man. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. How's your time been in Portland so far?
I can't complain.
Yeah.
Different pace. Lets me kind of just get away from what I'm used to in New York. So it's been very nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the opposite, right? Because New York's got it's running.
Yeah.
And here's a bit more chiller pace.
Yeah, it definitely is.
How do you think that makes you feel, just like as a creative, like being here in that different environment? What is that doing to you mentally?
Yeah, I mean, mentally right now, since I'm not like necessarily based here, it's more of just like a trip. It's nice to kind of step away, and then now I could plan out my future projects here. But I do understand that, like, if you are set here, you're based here, what we were talking about earlier, if you have the right discipline, right? Because I prefer chaotic. I prefer chaos.
Yeah, you want to be in what's happening.
Correct, but you have the right mental discipline, right? You'll be able to still flourish and navigate in a more calm sea.
Yeah.
And that's what Portland is. Now, I definitely can see why people come out here for like a retreat or something like that, because it's environment's here for that.
Yeah. And you don't take a lot of breaks.
Nah, it's very rare. I don't even know how to spell break. But yeah, my dad told me at a young age, and it really stuck with me. The more you sacrifice now, the less you will later. He told me that at a very young age, and it always carried throughout, my time growing up. Yeah. And I still say that to myself, today. So the more I could, sacrifice now, if it's time, if it's energy, I know my future family, my future self will benefit from that. And that's what we're trying to do now. Yeah.
I love it. Now, take me to a little bit of your resume. I mean, your resume crosses so many different spaces, but at the same time, you can be a little bit reclusive, right? Like, you're not trying to be in all these different things, super face forward out there. Yeah. Has that been more intentional?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. We spoke about it over dinner.
Yeah.
I like to say I'm a him-trovert, right? So when it's time to be him, when it's time to, if it's time to play, it's game time, then I'm gonna be that. But yet 9 out of 10 times, like, I like to be to myself and reclusive, and just finding that balance of when to turn on, when to turn off. Definitely, like, this is a challenge from time to time, because our instinct is to crawl back in the shell, crawl back into the studio, and just, stick with that.
Hide in the work.
Correct, yeah. But, if you love something, if you believe in something, right, you're gonna have to do shit that you don't want to do. So if it is being out and about, if it is networking, if it is doing interviews or whatnot, you do that for the, betterment of your artistry. Yeah. And, that's where, I sometimes have struggles with, sometimes I thrive in, but, it's all part of, like, the process.
It's part of, like, getting out there, right? You have to, like, get out of the comfort zone.
Correct.
But it's also good to have a space you can retreat into, as well as you kind of do that bit of stretch. Yeah. Right? Tell me a little bit about childhood. We spoke a little bit about it, but you had maybe you describe it as a little bit of a troubled childhood earlier on, right? Yeah. You were interested in different things maybe that your folks didn't want you to get into. How did that inform who you would become?
Yeah, growing up, we grew up in Jamaica, Queens. Yeah. This is in the early 90s, so it's, different now, but back then, it was still that typical, what you see in the movies and TV show kind of thing. Yeah. And we stuck out as a family, especially as Filipinos. Like, most of the Filipinos in Queens would be in Woodside, Briarwood, Jackson Heights, whatnot. But yeah, that side specifically not. We don't always see that kind of thing. So like being a target was, fast growing up. And that's what basketball was a big part, of getting to know people so they can get to know me as well. So if it wasn't full basketball, that's why till this day, if you look at my work, a lot of my projects, a lot of my design work, there are some sort of basketball court, basketball, whatever, themed things in there. And even just my mentality of being a team player. Like, that's been just always my thing. Like, if we're all in the same boat, like, let's get there. Yeah. Kind of thing. So yeah, growing up, it was hard to, meet people, talk to people, like whatnot. But once I finally was able to do that through basketball, definitely made it easier. And then with that, you start meeting people that maybe you're not supposed to be meeting. You know what I mean? But like even that, those moments were my first signs of, like, honestly, entrepreneurship.
How come?
Right.
If it
was illegal or legally, right? Like we did things to make shit happen, right? Pay the bills, whatever not, or even if it's believing in an idea, right? that was the first time where I've noticed like, oh, like, you can make money on your own.
He's like, I don't have to like,
you don't have to
be without.
Correct. And that was technically my first job was, you know, being out there. And yeah, you learn even time management. Like you gotta like, you know what I'm saying? Like you gotta balance school, practice, and then whatever you gotta do after. Kind of thing. But yeah, that, you know, I was in and out of, you know, legal bullshit when I was a kid. But yeah, it's all growing pains. Like I appreciate those times now, and I appreciate my parents just like still seeing some sort of a light in me eventually. And that's where like the work ethic almost started. Obviously my parents and my dad, like my mom, like they showed me, they planted that seed in me.
Yeah.
And then, you know, doing what I had to do definitely kind of shaped it and like gave me that work ethic of like, yo, I want to be the number one, whatever, kind of thing.
When did you start to see like the shift of going from like, you know, you kind of caught up in some street life stuff?
Yeah, when we moved. So my little brother was born. Definitely like oopsies baby kind of thing. He wasn't planned, nothing like that. My parents were doing a little bit better, like financially, and we actually moved to Long Beach, California.
Oh, so y'all moved completely across?
Completely across
Was a part of that your parents wanted to also get both of you into a different situation, or just
like
work
my parents
related?
were doing, so both, right? Work related, my dad got a better job offer, right? Also, they didn't want to have to raise my brother what I kind of went through, right? If they're able to provide him with something else, and if I'm able to provide him something else too, then like, let's do that. So we went to Long Beach. I was there for a few months only. There's a school I went to called Longfellow Elementary. And I remember we shut down the school. They shut down the school. They had like an elongated summer break, right? They started summer break, I think, in March or April or something like that, right?
That's a long summer break.
And that's because Whoopi Goldberg was filming Sister Act 2.
Get out of here.
Right, so they shut down the school for filming. So during that time...
Wait, they shut down y'all school so Whoopi could record Sister Act 2?
So I remember that, right? And so during that time, that elongated summer break, we went to Arizona. My mom wanted to see the Grand Canyon, Sedona, We went over there, they fell in love with it. And this is before Arizona it is what it is now. Right, now I think Phoenix is like the 5th largest like city.
It's got the prices to go along with it.
But back then, there was just Mormons and farmers. Like, that's it. And so what we were paying rent-wise in Long Beach is a mortgage in Arizona. So then we moved over there.
Wow.
Right, so that changed from New York to Long Beach. It was drastic, but there was still like culture.
In these different
parts. Right, like it's okay, like I can find, you know, my pocket.
Yeah.
In Arizona, it was tough.
How so?
There was no culture yet. You know what I mean? There was, you know. So yeah, the first, I would say, year or so, it was a little tough out there. But then that's when I was able to get to know me during that time.
Because you're out of the chaos.
Yeah, there's no chaos.
It's way more still.
Yeah, correct. So that's when I started really like, and I should have known, like, look, in hindsight, right? I should have known that I was going to get into some visual, some sort of thing eventually.
Why you say that? Because you were...
I mean, if it was Legos, right, light brights, those things, right, coloring, whatever, like, I would always just do that on my pastime. Like, you know, video games wasn't really necessarily a thing for me growing up. Like, not that I had anything against it, but I just preferred...
You just didn't gravitate to it.
Yeah,
you wanted something you could...
Correct. I just wanted to make
with your hands.
Whatever, and, you know, let the time pass by kind of thing. So that was always my hobbies growing up. And I remember I used to be able, and I can't do this now just because the Lego technology is different, the pieces are different, but like I used to be able to like build, you know, one of their concepts without a menu and just kind of just figure that out. Like that was
so you see the reference and then without like the instruction, you start to piece it together.
Just give me the box. And I could then, you know, you lay out all the pieces. Count them out, see what, and then I would spend my time doing that shit, you know what I mean? But then eventually, you know, going to high school, right? You know, basketball was definitely still a thing for me. That's how you kind of meet friends. And yeah, I thought in high school, ball was gonna be a thing. Right, like
you was trying to go to the league?
I was trying to, right? But I went to the PBA, which is like the Filipino basketball league. I played out there for 2 summers.
Oh, that's wild.
And I was on like their summer like league team. No, not on the professional team, but I got to see that kind of experience. And when I came back, I just had to be real with myself, man. I'm 5'7", like I'm not. Come on, like get it together. And I have a very realistic point of view in like life and whatnot. So at that point, it's like, yo, give up that thing. Right.
Focus and shift on.
And so I actually focused on cooking,
Really?
Yeah.
What kind of cuisine?
So it was anything, because like growing up, I would go to the Philippines in the summer, or if I was helping my dad cook or whatnot. So I did think like, Le Cordon Bleu, right? Let's go there.
Let's go into school, maybe get something, see what
And
comes out of it.
my parents, they're both still in the hotel business at the time, and to play it safe, they're like, yo, go to college for hotel, restaurant management. We'll get you a job right out of college. You're gonna be okay.
They wanted you to figure out a safer route.
Yeah.
Something that's risky.
No. Let's do something. I can't see myself behind a desk all day. Nothing against that, but like myself personally, I can't do that, man. Like that's just not for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, tried Le Cordon Bleu out. Hell no. Like that's not. They took the fun out of cooking to me.
It felt too regimented to you?
Yeah, it's just, and I get it. There's certain parts of cooking, especially when baking, you gotta be precise, you gotta, right? But with me, the way I learned how to cook from my grandparents or my dad, it was just feel. You taste, you smell throughout the time, whatever. So they took the fun out of the way. So I knew I wasn't gonna be happy doing that.
Yeah.
And I remember my dad, what do you wanna do? I mean, I like dressing up well, like I like looking cool, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So I remember I had to give him a PowerPoint presentation on FIDM, the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandise, because this is like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Right, art and fashion wasn't as heightened as it is now.
It was not it was not also visible to parents.
Correct. Good,
right,
yeah,
like we knew because of the circles we were in and probably publications, but to our parents, they still knew
like
traditional
you want to do what?
roles, right? They're like, go work in hotels, go work in hospitality, go do this. They're like, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, so it was, that was interesting as well too. Just trying to convince, like, yo, like I want to do this, like, and yeah, I was able to go to, FIDM. I majored in visual communications, and that major is literally the people that don't know what the fuck they want to do yet. Right, our course was made up of everyone else's course.
It was bits and pieces, so it was more informative.
Yeah,
it wasn't like a straight shot.
Yeah, it was like, here's the door, like, you get to peep inside, and right, here's the vibe.
Yeah.
So I went there, and it was a cool time in school, because I was the hot girl. Right, this is 10 years ago, right, where fashion art and like being a straight heterosexual male, like it wasn't as common as it is now for someone to be there. So I remember every quarter, teachers take roll, say my name, I'm here, by the tone of my voice, everything, I'm not, right?
Yeah.
Every teacher would just look up and smile and be like, whoa, there's a guy in here.
Yeah.
So my perspective immediately with his projects wasn't like everyone else, all the other students. They weren't used to my,
you being there, yeah.
So I was the hot girl, right? I turned in projects late, didn't deserve that grade, but I got it just because it was me. I needed that.
Yeah.
I don't do well, with academics, that whole structure of authority in school.
You needed your own time.
Yeah, I was like, I want to have it easy. And I targeted FIDM, and it worked out. I graduated top 50 in my class. Shouldn't have. Yeah. And then from then on, I was like, okay, we could do this.
We could do something with it.
We could do something like this.
How'd you find out about FIDM in the first place?
A school field trip. Yeah, field trip. Yeah. To there, yeah. The high school I went to in Arizona at the time was Mesquite High School, right? And they're definitely more on like the, richer side of things. Right, and so they would take, field trips to a lot of colleges, throughout the year, and that was one of them. I remember going to that, and just stored in the back of my head. Yeah, just never know. And I remember like, oh, LA, fashion. Yeah, let's try it. On one of those moments. And yeah, that's how I discovered it, just through my high school.
So you graduate, you get out. And where do you go? Do you go back to Arizona? You go to LA?
So yeah, I stayed there. I actually started celebrity styling.
How in the world you get into celebrity styling?
Yeah, two guys, Ugo Mosey and DeVar Campbell. I don't think they're no longer working together, but Ugo Mosey is still a very predominant, stylist in the fashion world. I think I just applied on some random,
You saw a link
and they needed an assistant at the time, so, I did that for a couple months, and got to do a couple of Disney shows, a couple of red carpet events, right? And then I was like, I don't know if I want to style. Maybe it's not my thing. Yeah.
What was it about it that you felt maybe had like a disconnect with?
I personally don't like getting ready. I don't like getting ready. It's that's your job. Is to get people ready.
Get people ready.
10 times. Right? And once whatever the X amount of times is, right? Yeah. And so that seed was planted in my head. Right, and that was for later when I touched back to styling. But So after that little moment when I was assisting them, all right, let me try visual merchandising somewhere. So I got a job at Zara, at the Grove in LA.
Yeah.
Got that job, and Zara, the corporate. There was no creativity.
No, they have these plans, these giant plans.
Right, they email you a sheet of paper.
And they said, do
right? They don't
this.
even have photos sometimes, it's article numbers. Right, and then maybe at most you could change the table display or something like that. But you got to choose between these things though.
Yeah.
So I got exposed to that, and I was like, no, man, like this is I don't like this either. And I remember just walking around Melrose, and I saw a classmate that worked at a store called Joy Rich. Joy Rich is a Japanese-based brand, right? And back then they did have a moment, where people was fucking with them.
Yeah, heavy.
I applied to be a sales associate. They were opening up a store across the street called Wild Style.
Okay.
Wild Style is a concept store based on the Japanese store called Great. And very like Dover Street opening ceremony, right? That kind of vibe. So that wasn't open yet, but they hired me for that. But I had to work at Joy Rich first, and it was across the street.
And then you go.
So I was a sales associate for a couple months. And when that store finally opened, I just started visually just putting things. There was no visual merchandiser yet. So I was a sales associate.
So you just started.
I just started. I saw something that needed to be done, something that could be improved, and okay, let me try. And at that moment in time, I remember the owner came in from Japan, and he ended up being my mentor later on. But Kubo was the owner of Great, and he at the time owned Wild Style as well. And he saw me doing my displays and whatnot.
And he didn't have like because sometimes when you have like these owners, these figureheads, and they have their vision and opinions on things, some folks may not be as comfortable with someone else just deciding to randomly do something they didn't ask him to do. How did he respond to seeing you, take your own initiative to start merchandising things?
I mean, off the jump, there is that language barrier.
Yeah.
Right from the jump.
Yeah.
And it was just off of grunts and smiles. Right? It was grunts and smiles. And then, he's like, do visuals. Be the visual merchandiser here. So I started doing, all the visuals there. And then I started to be able to renovate, have ideas. Let's change this up. I don't like, this stuff. So after a year and a half of doing that, I was doing my thing. Wild Style is now, you would go there for the visual experience. And so he's like, let's take it up a notch. We see that you could do this. So that's when Kubo, he let me live out in Japan for a year. Like, he's like, I want you to immerse yourself in, what I know.
So through that opportunity, you were able to move out there and it's on the company and like.
Yeah, on the company, you know what I mean? And, and I remember the CFO at the time, she did not like me. I just remember seeing her face when she was writing that check out, and it just made me so happy.
What was it about it that she didn't like? She didn't like.
I mean, I back then too. Like I was not as laid back, right? I'm the shit.
Yeah. You was like,
right. So I was a cocky little
young. Yeah.
So I don't blame her, like at all, But yeah, so got to live out in Japan for a year. Soak all that in. Shibuya and Harajuku. They would change my hotel location depending on the store that I was working at the time. But yeah, started off with Great and Joy Rich because Joy Rich has a few locations there. Great has one specific location, right? Started there, so I learned a lot of things there. When it comes to the feng shui of the store, right? Customer traffic, observing your demographic. Always having plants in your store is a thing, right? Cleanliness, right? Like,
was that vastly different from the experience when you were in LA? Yeah. Like, take me through the night and day things that you started to notice. Because, right, that was a part of it, right? He wanted you to come absorb.
Correct.
What were you absorbing? Like,
the first thing was on the bullet train, right? The bullet train alone, like, everyone's luggage is in one area, right? When you enter the bullet train, you put it right there. So that means like there's a character kind of like trust here, right? And once you get off the bullet train, now I'm in Tokyo, right? I'm walking around. Yeah. No bikes or skateboards are necessarily tied up. Like they're all in front of the store for a reason. There's also a reason why you could drink in public, right? So is that trust of like, I'm not gonna abuse this privilege that was given to me, right? And that could definitely carry on to all aspects of life, right? So just because you presented something, right, doesn't mean that, right, it was owed to you, kind of thing. So that alone, and even just like, the cleanliness was huge, you know, in there, you know, so the quality of living, right? So if your environment, right, is thriving, a domino effect of that is you're gonna thrive, right?
Right.
Eventually, no matter how long it takes, doesn't matter, right? You're gonna thrive eventually, and that's what started happening there, you know. Even if it was, you know, if you go to the counter, if you buy something in Japan, right, they, you know, you give them the money, right? You have change back, right? They always give you a little plate, little thing back with the change in it, right? So even some moments like those, the cleanliness, right? They're not gonna touch the money, like it's, like, you know, here you go, like, you know. So that stuff. So the cleanliness was huge out there, and then the work ethic, you know.
Different.
Yeah, the work ethic was different, you know. Like I know here, like, go to a retail store, you're gonna see a sales on their phone. Right, they're gonna be talking to somebody, like chilling, like
you're the last priority.
There's no downtime there. Like they took pride in their work ethic. They took pride in keeping their store clean. They cook, right? Like they don't, and so that was like really cool to me.
Yeah.
Right, having everyone have the same sort of goal. Right, let's make this the best looking store possible.
And it was more moving like a unit.
Correct.
Versus individual.
It wasn't like I did this last week. Why do I have to dust the shelves again? It was, oh, I got you.
Yeah.
So it was that, like that whole teamwork, right, of just something as basic as cleanliness that we Americans take for granted on a daily basis, right? They like, so moments like those, like I still carry with me now.
Totally.
You know, that's why, like, you know, any workspace I'm in, if it's anywhere from the wood shop to a store, it's gonna be clean. It's gonna be clean.
Do you find that has positive aspects on your creative approach? Like, do you feel like it frees you up and you're like able to focus on what you want?
Yeah.
And that's a part of that process.
Correct, because like there's no clutter, right? Like there's no clutter. Like even if you're looking at, like you wake up, right? You look over at your desk, smash shit on your desk, papers, projects, whatever, right? You're gonna wake up like, oh fuck, I got a lot of shit to do.
Look at all this stuff.
You wake up to a cleaner desk, organized with not like, okay, let's tackle the day, right? Instead of I got to get through the day, let's tackle the day. And something as your environment or cleanliness can change your mind, just like that.
I definitely get what you're saying, because when I find like I got a lot of stuff, I'm like looking at the stuff versus like getting to the things that I want to get done. And it's just those little bitty things that I don't think we always appreciate or think about that could change your whole.
Take for granted.
Yeah.
Especially nowadays too, because like, you know, we're all about the finished product. Right, not necessarily what we took to it, right?
To get there.
Right, people love the TikTok process videos, but do they?
More so watching them than actually the process.
Correct, and that's why they're only a minute long. Right, like the process ain't no minute long.
No, process is sometimes years.
Yeah, you know, so, but yeah, just like this, like simplifying things. You know, you're able to do that in Japan. You know, like taking a step back and like, okay, like let's focus on things that are important that could actually help, right? Because there are positive domino effects. Right? Over here, it's almost like domino effect here has to have like a negative connotation to me. Anytime I speak about domino effects or whatnot in business aspects or artistic aspects, domino effect for some reason has like a negative connotation for some reason. Yeah. And for me, it doesn't always have to. You know, that's positive. Yeah. You know, kind of thing.
Tell me about when you started to shift out of being in retail and like solely, and you also were like exploring your own creative projects. Like, what was that journey into starting to see what you wanted to share with the world?
Yeah, that took a while, man. You know, it took a while. I think we roughly spoke about it over dinner, but we done made people millions, thousands, right? Whatever it is. Yeah. So I knew my time was gonna be, you know, eventually, and I don't think my time is here yet even. I'm just scratching the surface in a sense, right? But like I knew like eventually, like, okay, like, you know, I want to be prepared for that. Yeah. So in LA, I came back from Japan. I lived in LA, you know, still. Came back and, you know, I was definitely at one point like that it dude. Before influencers was a job, before all that, right? Because this is 2012, like this is long.
These apps are Instagram's starting to bubble. Yeah. Twitter and Facebook had been around, but there wasn't this culture of
PR wasn't a necessity yet.
Yeah, it wasn't that type of thing yet.
And not many companies wanted to accept that yet either, right? So I came back and, bro, I just got over it, man. Yeah. Like I just got over the scene, the people, like, you know, my like introvert self kind of just kicked back in, like, you know, and then it's like, I want to, I deleted everything. Deleted IG, my number, quit my job, all my fashion jobs, right? Because at that point I started consulting. So I was the visual manager. When I came back from Japan, I was the visual manager at Wild Style and Joy Rich. I would consult for 424, consult for Stussy, right? Like, so I was starting to do my thing. Yeah. But yeah, I got over it, man. I deleted everything and I just, you know, went back to what I knew. And I just went back on the street and I just, you know, paid bills throughout that for my last year in LA. You know, that was obviously has a mental kind of effect on you, right? Yeah. You went from getting flown out to every fashion week, living in Japan, styling Rihanna, right, to now you're on your couch bagging up shit. Yeah. Right, like that extremity was a lot for me. And so that last year in LA was very difficult for me. You know, I was definitely, you know, kind of in my shit. Yeah. You know,
do you feel like, not to label it or anything like that, but did you feel like you were dealing with like anxiety or depression and stuff like that?
Check, all that. You know what I'm saying? That's when I also learned money wasn't like everything. We was making money. Yeah,
but you wasn't.
That wasn't the issue, right? Yeah. Bills were still on auto pay, like, but yeah, I just wasn't happy, like, you know. So I was like, I got to go back home, right? So I remember my friend lived in New York. He was a trucker for a, you know, studio, regular truck. So yo, we got you know, openings for being a trucker. I've never driven a truck before. Right, and it's a box cube truck, 14 footers, 32 footers, 24, whatever it is. I've never driven no truck before. Yeah. A lot on the resume, a lot in the interview.
You're like, oh yeah, I didn't do this, no problem.
I drive this all the time, my man. I'm good with this shit, man. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. So I get flown out, or I fly, I move out there. Yeah. 2 bags and my dog. Moved out there, right? Talked to my friend, lived on his floor for like the first 6 months that I, you know, moved back to New York. Yeah. And now I'm trucking. My first day.
You're legit trucking.
Yeah, my first day, right? I remember dropping off my dog and my bags to this new apartment of mine, right? This was the floor of my homie's room. Dropped them off. Had to go to LIC at this place called CC Rental where we rent out trucks. Hey, there's gonna be a truck under Mary Howard Studios. Please pick it up. All right, cool. Boom, guy brings the truck around. It's a 32-foot box cube truck. I'm like, oh nah.
He's like, oh no.
I've never driven New York. Right, because I was here when I was a kid.
Yeah, but
I've never driven in New York, and I've never driven. Fuck it. So we did that.
So you did it anyway.
And honestly, bro, like I'd never got in an accident, nothing like that. Like this whole, like I was a trucker for 2 years, didn't get nothing, like, right? Yeah. And so I was like, okay, this is the first time where I'm kind of like behind the scenes of shit. I'm a trucker. We're loading up the props. We're loading them into the studio, and you know, with work ethic, with pride, right? You just start climbing. And eventually, I was at that company for like 5-6 years. Ended up being a logistic and operational manager for the studio side and their fabrication side. And once I started working more with our fabrication side, that's when I started getting exposed to all these different materials, right? So as much as I was fighting the whole like being a creative.
So yeah, you fighting the creative, but you were also fighting against that actual place that you were in, I would say, right? Because you were like, I can't see myself being in this much structure. Yeah. Yeah.
Same. So it was like, you know, so that first year was very interesting for me, right? And now I'm getting my groove back slowly, right? As much as I don't mind being behind the scenes, I don't mind not having to post shit, whatever. Yeah. I knew it felt like it was brewing. Like it was brewing, you know, like, and that's what happened. You know, after being exposed by, you know, all these materials, after working with so many different clients, you know, you name Cause Dior, Louis Vuitton, you name, like, you know, Vogue, we built all their stuff out, you know, right? So you're getting inspired, you're seeing shit, right? You're seeing things come from sketches now to this. I like that, right? I like that process, right? And I saw an open market, right? People love logos. People love looking at themselves. Let's put that together, right? So I remember I was like, the very first mirror I made was a swoosh mirror, Nike swoosh mirror. Yeah. It's a logo we all love, we all know.
Grew up with it, right? Seen it everywhere.
And also from a business aspect, like it's hard sometimes to have a product that like marketing, right, creativity, like they kind of have the same like synergy, same like, right, outcome. A swoosh mirror to me, like it was a perfect marriage in those sense, right? You had that photo op for your marketing sense. Everyone's gonna take a selfie
of this, yeah, of
right?
course.
And then you have the artistic part of like, I haven't seen this before.
Yeah.
I know I'm not the first person to make, custom mirrors, but taking logos we all know or characters we all know, like.
It's a nuance.
Yeah. And like, let me capitalize on this nostalgic shit too. I see everyone else doing it. Let me do it too.
Yeah.
And let me get people's attention. And that's how it slowly started doing what I do now. And timing was huge for me. 2019 is when I, slowly started doing things.
Yeah.
And I wasn't posting like that either. Like I still was trying to figure out.
Trying to figure out what it was. When you say you started doing things, what were some of the ways that you were experimenting and learning?
Yeah.
You were essentially learning.
Yeah. So I mean, learning like what kind of woods to use, what even adhesive to use when I'm putting shit down. Right now, it's like not just mirrors. Let's do shelves. Let's do tables. Everything we've built for other clients in the past. Let's build now for
it?
let's make it cool, let's make it cute, right? So that whole thing, was great. And then managing, right? You're managing your time, you're managing, right? It's not just me that makes it. I have an industrial designer. Shout out to Chris. Like I wouldn't be here without him, right? Even my graphic designer Heather, like I wouldn't be here without her. So even learning how to work with people, right? Learn, because like now I used to be able to do this for other clients.
Yeah.
I never did it for myself.
Yeah.
Right, so it's that add-on like pressure, like it's just like.
Did you felt the pressure because you felt like the name was attached to it? So you felt.
Yeah, because like I'm like now it's like I think I might want to come out with something now for the first time ever. Right, I've been quiet for years.
Yeah.
Right, like some people still remember what I did back then, which is fine. Right, if you don't, it's okay.
Yeah.
But I knew like people that I cared about that I want them to be proud of. Oh, he's doing something.
Of course. Yeah.
Right, so it's like okay, we could have all done a graphic tee or hoodie. I want to make a streetwear. Like, we could have done that.
Yeah.
But I always wanted to, do something different. Like, you only get one first impression. So it's like, all right, let me
figure out what my statement's gonna be.
Correct.
Here.
And I found mirrors, because mirrors was on the chopping block. I actually was gonna start coming out with my first product was gonna be oversized ashtray side tables. I made them out of resin and I made them out of wood. Right. Just think of a ashtray this size. Big ashtray with legs. Put your incense in there, candles, whatever. And that was my first thing, and that's when now the business side comes in, right? As new customers, right, as a new artist, a new brand, whatever this is, are they gonna be okay, or can they accept a $700 right item from someone they don't know?
They don't know.
Who are you?
Yeah.
Right? Why is it $700? And I don't blame them. I can't blame them. They don't know the process of, right?
How it goes,
how it makes,
what goes
right?
into it,
all that.
That it's you, that it's not a big corporation.
Correct, but everything's handmade, everything is right.
It takes time.
So I was like, okay, let me dub that for now.
Huh.
And that's when I was like, okay, I got to run with the mirrors and the logos. And I knew, and when it comes to legal wise too, like I was like, I'm small enough still, like they don't care. And to this day, like
you ain't got that cease and desist.
Yeah, we good. Like until I get that, man, like but
yeah.
That's when I was like, okay, let me get people's attentions. And that's when I did the Yankee mirror, the swoosh mirror, and then the swoosh mirror table. I kind of just, wanted to do that.
What has been your take on space, right? Like physical space. I feel like you have an opinion on it, because as we've been talking, you talked about that influence of when you went to Japan and space there, whether it was on the bullet train or whether it was the cleanliness of the places you went into. And then you talked about not going into garments immediately, but going into home goods, essentially. And it also being about space. What is it about space that you find inspiration in?
Negative is positive. So like negative space is just like as important, as positive as, right, color, as the design, as a whatever. And that's where the mirror was almost a perfect thing, right? You yourself, that reflection you see when you take that selfie, when you're looking, right? That's the design, is you.
Yeah.
Everything else is negative space. Everything's behind you, right? You're in the forefront in a sense. So that, knowing that, accepting that negative is positive. Right, and that can also just carry on with just life in general. It doesn't have to necessarily be from an artistic point of view, right? Negative is possible. Going through negativity, going through bullshit, right? It's a good thing, right? You're supposed to be doing that. And nowadays, like, people, the first sight of shit hitting the fan or things not going their way, it's like panic, right? Like, right? And there's levels of panic, right? But now it's like, yo, bro, like it's good, right? Because like if whatever you're going, whatever that is, right? You're supposed to become a better person after this situation, right? And then say if it's 2 or 3 years or 2 or 3 months or 2 or 3 days after that, like, you know, where life seems to be okay, and then something else comes up, right? Whatever you learned from that previous time, right? If you learned what you were supposed to learn, you're supposed to be able to.
You can apply it and get through. You know, a lot of times, because it's definitely something I struggled with coming up was facing some of that pain, and the realization that in order to get better, to grow, it's like you have to go through it. I think a lot of times people don't realize that they can actually go through it and come out better on the other side, when in fact you sitting in your comfort and running away from it is blocking you from that ability, right?
And like people forget, like it's our responsibility as humans, as artists, as a father, mother, whatever it is, to evolve.
Yeah.
Right? Like we don't have to stay as is. We're not necessarily in our final form yet.
Yeah.
You know? And to get to your final, right? To evolve, sometimes you got to go through shit, man. Eat shit.
Yeah.
Like, go through it. You know,
go
like
through
pain is okay.
Yeah.
Right? Like even like something as like a simple metaphor is like when you work out, right? Someone working out, right? That pain of, right? You're doing it because of a positive outcome later.
Yeah.
But you have to go through this first.
Yep.
Same shit, man.
So you get to the other side of it and you feel better. You can't feel better without a little bit of
let me work
tension.
out. I don't go to, I'm not a gym dude. I'm not no gym dude. Right? Yeah. So let me work out this way. Right? And I'm gonna come out stronger mentally, like not physically, but mentally after. And I'm cool with that. You know, nothing ever gets presented that you aren't supposed to handle.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Tell me about the recognition that would start to come as you got more comfortable sharing things publicly and folks started to see it. Like, you know, for example, like you had a lot of media and folks in culture started paying attention, including folks like Drake. And you mentioned like putting in that hard work for these outcomes, but I imagine you weren't doing it for those outcomes. But what did you think about the attention that was starting to happen?
It's like dessert. It's dessert. It's not the main entree. It's dessert. Sometimes I have space for it. Sometimes I don't. Right. There are moments where I have space for it. Something like Drake, for example. Right. We all listen to him. You know, he's #1 artist of our generation. I have space for that. Right. Because I understand that if I'm able to catch your attention with at the time I had no manager. I didn't pay nobody to get me on hype beast or hire somebody, right? None of that. This is all just like guerrilla marketing. I'm in the streets hanging up mirrors, in the subway stations hanging up mirrors, and just throughout that. So when moments like that, recognition, like it's dessert to me. Like it's sweet. It's not the main entree. That's not why I came to the restaurant. Yeah. Right? I came to the restaurant to eat.
I want to eat a meal.
Dessert, all the other shit, it's cool. It's sweet. It's part of the game too. You know what I mean? But yeah, like that's why it was important for me to go through what I went through in LA, right? So if it was, you know, the celebrities I got to style or work with then, or the, you know, Fashion Week, being surrounded or being at dinners with, you know, Yoon or whoever it was, these huge people, like I was getting groomed at that point. To now then it's like, oh, it's numb, right? So I'd rather have than kind of have like a fanboy moment when I was younger, when it was on someone else's time. Now that it's on my time, I was trained for that now in that sense, right? So now I could like, you know, put myself in the shoes I was before and be like, okay, let's not do that. Right now, you're representing you now. You don't have to represent a company.
I feel like it's different when you're representing yourself personally. Like I take it so much more serious, like to the nth degree.
I still think about emails or conversations I had with, you know, certain recognizable people that we all know. I'm like, damn, I shouldn't have said that. I should have said something else. Like I think about, like at night, just a random conversation was coming. Like I should have. Why did I say that? Like, you know what I'm saying? But the recognition, it's fine. It's cool, man. Like I appreciate it. It's very humbling, you know. But the recognition that matters the most to me is, you know, from just an everyday person, man. Like, well, I get asked a lot, like, what's your favorite thing you made? Right? Like, and it's not necessarily a tangible thing that I made. It's my motto, accept and adapt. Right? So those messages I get from, you know, supporters. That's saying accept and adapt, my motto has helped them. that recognition, I freak out. I drop my phone. I walk away and maybe tear up a little bit, whatever it is. That recognition is I fuck with.
Why is that more? Why do you hold that more valuable than anything else?
Yeah,
right. And then I'm also going to ask you to unpack the model.
Yeah, of course. Except in I mean, for me, that a mirror or something I've made a physical you could admire whatnot in a specific space, or when you're at home, or when you're at a store. The words accept and adapt you take everywhere with you, right? And that's with good and bad.
Yeah.
Kind of like the domino effect thing, how it has like a negative connotation to me. Like accepting and adapting to something doesn't have to be negative in a sense, right? Or accepting something doesn't have to be negative in a sense, right? It could also be a positive kind of thing. So like, you have to accept and adapt even positive news, or what you were saying, recognition.
Yeah.
Right, you must accept this recognition and then adapt to it, right? So adapting to either wilding out and being, I did it.
Yeah.
Drake, follow me, bro. Yeah. Like, FaceTime me, bro. Like,
yeah.
Right? Or you adapt to like, okay, I'm on the right track. Let's do that, right? And that's been, and so those messages from supporters that like, I was going through a tough time, reminding myself of this, like model helped me go through that, right?
Wow.
Or if it's, someone else. So, but that recognition, when it comes to that model specifically that I've been able to kind of just like spread, that hits me the most. Like in happy, sad, all that shit.
I find my value in that as well. Like there's so many things that I've done, and I don't even have a favorite. But to your point, like even before we sat down, we released a film, and someone responded, and they were like, "You have no idea like how much this is encouraging me to keep going." And for me, that's important because I'm like, it's not easy out here. And I think, I know folks get caught up in like these things that they see, and they think, oh, well, I didn't get it done in this amount of time, so it must not be for me. And it's like, nah, fam, like I didn't get it done in this amount of time either.
Yeah. And
like,
I'm still trying to get it done.
Yeah, like it's taking time. Like not everyone is going to be handpicked to be, this image or face for these brands and get millions of dollars pumped behind them.
Correct.
The great majority of us have to work for every inch that we're going to get. And so I love to hear that you're like, nah, that stuff's great. But where I find, solace is when I know I'm actually helping the common person.
Day-to-day, just on a day-to-day thing too. Like it doesn't always have to be like on some business or art shit. Like, let's just be humans and like, let me help you go through your day. Yeah. So if it's just that motto, then like that recognition, like just like that humbles me and just like really makes everything worth it.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Tell me about how you think about the folks you'd like to work with and collaborate with. What goes through your process when you're figuring out like, I think I'll do this?
If it makes sense, like make it make sense and like to me, you know what I mean? Like nowadays too, when I get reached out by if it's brands or designers, right? Their collab is take my logo, right, and build something with it. And like to me, it's like it's you're a client, not a collaborator at that point.
Right. It's just a service.
Correct. So that's where I differentiate that. Yeah. Right. If I know we could actually cook something together, it's not just let's use Manila's pots and pans.
Yeah.
Right, like if you can bring some shit to the counter, then like okay, let's make something, let's cook something. You know what I mean? And that's where I usually say yes and to is where I can see that you have a vision, right? You're not just using my vision to, right? And I understand like there's some moments where you might have to do that. You might have to do a collab with a brand that you're not necessarily, right? But I don't need to name names, but I've said no to a lot of brands that we all know and love just because it just makes sense to me, right? Like I said, like I made an impression to. Like, the micro, my little world, my micro world here, right? To the masses, if I'm gonna do a collab with a brand, right, it's gotta be, right? Because now that's my first impression to the mass. To middle America, that's never known who I was, right? If it's internationally, whatever, that's gotta make sense. And so, as long as like if I feel like it's a 50-50 relationship, I'm with it. Like it doesn't even have to be art. It could be something other
outside
anything.
of that,
Yeah, as long as it doesn't seem like it's a client kind of feel, and it feels like a collaborative project, then like I'm with it.
You're about it.
Yeah, I'm with it.
Tell me what that end-to-end looks like, right? So if you're starting a project, say one of the logo projects at the beginning, like the Murakami mirror, what does that process look like from end to end for you?
Yeah, see an image, right? And It's like for 5 minutes I'll have my artistic cap on, right? I'm looking at cool images that I might want to vectorize, right? And then the next 5 minutes, right, for me to say I pick out 5 images while I have my creative cap on. The next 5 minutes I put my business cap on. That's where I filter what I want to do with the creative, right? So I pick these with the creative eye. Now I'm going to edit and filter with the business, right? So that's usually out. So Murakami, right? I remember when I first wanted to do Murakami, I don't want to just do a flower. Right, let's do colored mirrors and like maybe do the petals different just like him, or maybe let's do this image instead of just, right? And then you get the business side, like, nah, bro, like logistically, operationally, you should just probably stick with just silver, right? So that's that first step, right? Second step is, okay, picking the actual image, sending it to my my graphic designer, Heather. She'll vectorize that for me. If I don't have enough time, she'll do that, boom. Then I, get it sent to my industrial designer, Chris. He lets us know this could be done or not. Because he knows, he puts me, like, brings me down to earth.
He knows what can actually be made based on the machinery.
Correct.
The technology that's available today.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
So he's like, yo, what are you doing? You're wilding. So that's usually the process, right? I have an idea, I take it to Heather, right? She'll vectorize it and she's like my first line of defense, right? Yo, this is kind of crazy, or this is great, right? Whatever, depending on what she says or what we think together. Okay, let's take it to Chris. Chris, I want to make this next. This is the next drop. What do you think and what are your thoughts? If we get the green light from there, bro, then we make the sample. Sample will take like a day, right? We load up the sheet, have the machine cut it, right? Now I'm, and then what people don't know too is like I manually and physically clean every mirror and edit it till this day.
Wow.
Like, just because the machine will do its job, but there'll still be some fridges.
Some stuff that's on there.
Yeah, just some shit.
I just want to touch it.
And there should be some, like, I'm still operating in a small enough, like, market where, like, I can still touch everything.
You can still be very close to what
you make. Like, and that's the thing too people kind of forget. Like, I'm literally, like, every little corner, every little thing, like, I'm just going over it. And then after the sample is done and I feel like it's done, now it's like, okay, content. Right, you put on the content cap on, right? So if it's a Murakami flower, like, oh, okay, let's go to a flower field. Right, and then you take photos, right? And then that's when you post. Depending on reaction will depend on if I drop that thing or not. Because I don't mind making shit and then people just like it. For example, there's a moment where I made a lot of musical-based mirrors. Like, right, the Prince logo.
Okay.
The Rough Rider logo, the OVO Owl logo, whatever that was, right? And I could tell just from responses that people appreciated this, right? So as an artist, I did my job. But now as a businessman, I didn't do my job. So now let's go for it. Let's not do this. Let's not drop this. Because then overhead won't make sense. I'm not gonna, if someone orders only 2 prints, I'm not gonna make 2 prints, bro. Like, So having to
navigate things.
Yeah, it's always back and forth. Like business creative, like that kind of thing. And like, there's moments where it's tough and there's moments where it just kind of smoothly goes over. Yeah, facts. But that's usually the process.
How did you start to get comfortable with the value of your time and pricing and those things? Like, how did you get to a place where you're like, this is what this is worth to me and what I'm comfortable?
Yeah, so because to me, it's like I earned this. I deserve this now, right? So in the beginning, like obviously with like a lot of companies or artists and designers, like your price points might possibly be lower than what you wanted to, right? So you got to sacrifice that, in the beginning, to get people's attentions, to get followers, to get customers, right? You got to sacrifice that, even though your shit's worth way more than this. Right, all right, let me sacrifice this just for now, right? Because the payout's gonna be bigger, like later on.
Down the road.
Right, these 4, 5, 15 mirrors that I'm doing at $90 when I first started, right? It's just planting the seed for me being able to make 300 mirrors down the line for $700 each. Right, and that's what kind of happened. I deserve that now, right? I get it, right? I understand the whole, like, you got to start here. You got to eat dirt before you start eating caviar. Like, I get that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I really, like, I understand, like, I accept that part. So, okay, if eating dirt in a sense of, like, okay, me not making the price margins as I want it to be, that's okay. Because it's a sacrifice play for later.
For later, it's gonna come.
And so, yeah, I earned that, man. Like, that's what I kind of always, like, I never felt a way of pricing a mirror for $1,000. I earned that. Like, you know what I mean?
There's also pockets for everybody.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if that doesn't work for
and that's why timing was great too, bro, because like, you know, during quarantine, man, like people was at home.
People was at home and they was looking at their space.
They was looking around like this.
It's like, yo, I gotta change this.
Nothing but white walls, right, and thumbtacks holding up a poster. Like, you know, so that was great timing for me at that point, because already the year before I was figuring that out, right? I was turning heads here and there. I was, like I told you, I was hanging up mirrors all over the city, so people started like, what is this?
It was like, who is this?
Correct. Like, what's going on? So when people started getting employment checks, when they was home, right, now it's time to strike.
Yeah.
And that's when I went full force with it. That's when I quit my operational and logistic managing job. Because I used to work 70 hours a week at that, like 70 hours, bro, every day. We'd have 15 to 20, you know, installations, photo shoots, whatever, every day.
Yeah.
And my position specifically, like I'd be one of the only people that would literally touch every project. Right, if you're a set designer, right, you're only focusing on your, right. If you're a fabrication team, you're only focusing on this. I'm logistics and operational manager.
You're touching everything.
I touch literally everything, bro. So like at that point, like, COVID was like, I know I was very fortunate, very blessed to say 2020 was a positive year for me. I get that, and I'll never forget that either. Like, you feel me?
Yeah.
So that was the timing was great for me. You know, that's when I was okay. I'm gonna stop doing this. Let me focus on this, cause like I see that. Right, there's an opening right now, and I need to capitalize on this opening, and that's what I did. That's when I started 100% now Manila mixtape.
Yeah.
It wasn't a side project.
It wasn't a side project. Like, I'm fully focused on
this. And that's when my business cap came on. Right, it wasn't necessarily a creative thing at that point. Now it's like, let me get this unemployment checks.
Yeah.
Give me that.
Yeah.
Right, you wake up Sunday, Monday, whatever. You press 2 buttons, you get $500, $700. Right, you at home all day, looking at the white walls. Let me get that. And yeah, the timing was like crucial for my business.
Is everything.
Yeah, and people forget. Everyone's in a rush.
You can't be in a rush. You can't force it. Like, when it's supposed to happen, that's when it happens. But also paying attention to what's happening out in the world, as you described. One thing I wanted to ask you about was a quote that you said, and you said, "It's important to be aware, but never compare."
Yeah.
Now, as a person who's inspired by many things, how do you find balance in not comparing yourself with anyone, but also gathering your references at the same time?
Correct. Yeah. So being aware is knowing what's obviously your surroundings, right? And that's even like on IG too. Like, I feel like a lot of people, like, they're aware of everyone's work, their successes, right? The financial, like, cool part of the things, right? Whatever. And that's when people start comparing. Right? I've been working just as hard, and look at like that person. Like, you're right. Like, I busted my ass off 5 days for this project. Someone could post something, they just did that, right? And it's getting way more love.
It goes, yep.
Right? You have to be aware of that. Right? Why did they get this? Right? Why are they in a position that I'm not in? Not necessarily compare. Right? Not, oh, my shit sucks. Like, my situation sucks, and this is like, no, like, you just have to know. Like, you have to be aware of, okay, this is what they were doing. So apply that to your shit. And you never know. It could work out for you too. And that's what everything, and even if it's design, right, to just be aware, right, and not compare your shit. So aware of, like, oh, this color palette is coming in. It's pretty cool, like, right? And not necessarily compare, like, oh, like, why are they in this gallery, not me? Right, you just, like, that shit, and that's why.
I love that you mentioned, because just because someone else or something else is successful doesn't mean that you are not.
Yeah, correct.
Right, and then there's, and to the point of you talking about growth and getting better, it's like, you can always learn something. Correct. From someone else as well, right? But you have to be in the space where you're observing it in that way. You can't sit there and judge it, or sit there and compare, or sit there and just be in this negative space. It's like, woe is me. It's like
optics, man.
Optics.
Yeah, put on the right shades. Pair of shades, and you're gonna be all right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, I love your perspective. It's got a great, a positive outlook for how folks and different creatives can really think about how they're approaching things. What advice would you have for someone? And I know you're still, you're like, I'm still growing and getting there, figuring things out. But for some of the mad younger people that might be listening and watching, what advice would you have for them as they're trying to figure out their approach into creative and entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I mean, creative entrepreneurship, like, my advice, one of them, it's not necessarily the main advice, and depending on how old you are, would probably depend if I would say this to you or not, but my advice is to have a vice. have a fucking vice.
Tell me more.
Like, if it's a drink, if it's a blunt, if it's whatever it is, right? Have a vice. As long as it doesn't get away from your responsibilities as a human being, paying bills, getting to work on time, whatever it is, right? Have a damn vice, bro. The world's crazy. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, whatever can calm you down, or whatever can get you in your zone, right? Have that vice. Like, it's fine. It's okay, as long as it doesn't get in the way. Don't abuse your vice, right? Your vice is your backboard. Basketball, right? The backboard's your friend.
Yeah.
Your vice could be your friend. Doesn't have to always be like, oh, I'm gonna, right? A vice turns negatively when you start abusing it.
Yeah.
And that's with anything. The moment you start abusing shit, that's when it, right? So vice, yeah, have a fucking vice, man. Like, right? Have a drink when you get home, whatever, go out if you need to, right? But don't forget the main goal at the whole time. And then also when it comes to entrepreneurship, you don't take it so serious. It's fine. Yep. Do your thing. Like, and I'm not gonna sit here and say believe in yourself. Like, artists wouldn't be artists if they didn't believe in themselves already. Artists naturally we're cocky, we're egotistical, we're cocky. Different levels of there. Right? We might not always show it. We're not always right. It might be more inner. Some are more outlandish with it, right? But we're all we believe in ourselves. That's why we are artists. At the end of the day, I'm not gonna tell you to do something that you're doing, right? Like. So yeah, have a vice, right? Consumerism, it's a tough, thing to navigate through, but you gotta just accept that part, right? And then dark times is good. Dark times are good. Like, you're gonna look back at your dark times and be like, yo, I got through that.
I made it through that.
Right, like those times, bro, are more meaningful. Like if I'm if I'm stuck on a project, right? I don't think about the good times. Like, oh yeah, like I remember when I did this project for Danny Lay or Fabulous or Drake or right, whoever. I think about, oh man, like I remember that one time where I had to be on an 18-hour installation and I didn't know what to do and I was crashing and now I had to figure out this problem, right? Those moments I fuck with, because those moments is like, yo, bro, that was a tough time. Right? If I got through that, I could get through this. This is nothing. Yeah. So yeah, go through shit. Like that's go through shit, man. You gotta go through shit.
Manila, thank you so much for sitting with us and sharing your perspective and taking us through your journey.
Of course, man.
Really appreciate it. Excited for what's next.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.